We've had a few weeks here with a lot of games played, and Week 10 is no exception. 51 games, a really nice stagger, a bunch of teams playing 4 times, so we'll break all of that down. I also have some shallow and deep league waiver ads, some goalie streams, and hopefully everything you need to win Week 10, so let's just jump right into the schedule. Now, there is a nice breakdown to this week. There's not a lot of games or nights where there's only 2 games. So you got 4 on Monday, 10 on Tuesday, 5 Wednesday, Thursday has 8, Friday with 6, Saturday's a little heavy with 13, and then Sunday with 5. So no fewer than 4 games in any of these nights. So that's going to be a nice stagger for your guys. They're all going to get into your lineup. Now, a bunch of these teams play 4 times. You can see them on the left, and not all of these schedules are created equal, but none of them are perfect necessarily. And you can look at it here. There's a couple of interesting schedules. These 3 at the top have the Monday, Wednesday, and then either Friday or Sunday. So they do have 3 light nights if you want to count this Friday as a light night. I didn't necessarily do that at the beginning of the season because 6 is kind of the cutoff point. But if you want to, you got a couple of light night matchups here for the Islanders and the Sabres. You also have a couple of 4-game weeks for a lot of these Canadian teams. You've got Vancouver, Toronto, Ottawa, Calgary, and then we've got a couple of other schedules. And what I want to look at this week is finding players that are performing really well that you can add. So obviously Colorado might have the best week here, but we're not going to touch on them in too much detail because there's just not a lot to own outside of the top guys. Yeah, you could go Ross Colton. Yeah, you could go Josh Manson for some hits and blocks, but outside of that, there's nothing going on in terms of Colorado. So let's, before we break it down by team, let me just mention this. Ottawa Senators, 4 games this week, and they have from December 17th onward, 57 games. That is the most in the NHL. LA has 55, Washington 55, Devils and Edmonton with 54 games from December 17th onward. So those are the teams that are going to get the most volume. That's why I've been holding on to guys like Chychrun, who started to pick it back up. And we will get into Anton Forsberg in the goaltending section. But now let's turn to one of the teams that you can actually add a bunch of players this week from, and that's the New York Islanders. So if you're not paying attention, Matt Barzal has finally woken up. This is probably the best stretch of hockey he's had in many years, probably since his rookie year. 4 goals, 8 assists, 12 points in his last 5 games. He's 80% owned. If for whatever reason he's available in one of your leagues, go pick him up right now. He's dual eligible, center, right wing, and he's been absolutely dominant offensively this year. You can understand the reticence to pick up New York Islanders because of their offense, but their offense has been getting it done lately. They've been scoring 4 or 5 goals per game. They just beat the LA Kings on Saturday night, so they are 7-1-2 in their last 10, and they are 3rd in the Metro. So you might want to get access to some of these guys, and there are some guys that you can get access to. So Anders Lee is probably one of the better pickups. He's still in the top 5 or the bottom 5 in goals above expected, meaning he should be higher, scoring more goals, and they're starting to come for him now. 3 goals, 2 assists, 5 points in his last 6 games, averaging about 3 shots per game. He's 25% owned, so he's probably there for you, and he's going to get you those power play points as well. Speaking of power play points, Mike Riley picked up off waivers to fill in some injuries for New York Islanders defense core that is not as good as it was in the past, so their goaltending is taking a hit, but Mike Riley comes in and starts to play really well. A goal, 3 assists, 4 points, a power play point, a couple hits shots, a little bit of blocks coverage as well in the last 3 games, so he's been really good. He's playing third pair minutes, but if he's going to perform like that, if the Islanders are going to score like that, they've been getting some depth scoring as well. This is a guy that in deep leagues you could potentially try to target on a week like this where they're playing 4 times, and they have a couple games where they might get some goal scoring here, especially against Anaheim and Montreal. If you're just looking for power play points, Kyle Palmieri, 5% owned. He's a goal scorer with some shot volume, and he's got 3 power play points in his last 5 games. Not necessarily the best stat line all across the board, but he is getting some power play exposure and he's making it count. And you could bank on the shot volume and goals and hope that he performs for you this week. Now, a guy that you wouldn't necessarily expect, but he's been playing pretty well, Julien Gauthier. He's a hitter, so 15 hits in his last 7 games, over 2 hits per game. He's been doing that all season long, but he's started to add in some offense. When he was with the Rangers, not much of a goal scorer. He got a ton of opportunities and just never cashed in on them, but now he's starting to make them count. 2 goals, 3 assists in his last 7 games. He's 0% owned, so he's probably there for you. Obviously, if you have any exposure to Bo Horvat, who's also around 80% ownership, he would be another must-add. I think he's got 10 points in his last 5 games. riding shotgun with Barzell and on power play 1. A lot of good Islanders. JG Pageau had a nice game winner last night. You could potentially go there, especially for face-off leagues. So there's a lot of Islanders players that are available on your waiver wire. That's why we're featuring them here. But this is also the case for another team, and we're talking about the Arizona Coyotes, who are really impressive this year. There's a number of guys going, and you never know who's going to get it done at any given night. Lately, it's been Alex Kerfoot getting between 19 and 22 minutes per game, 9 points in his last 6 games. Very assist-heavy, but is getting some power play time. And if he's playing that much and he's dual eligible, he's getting you exposure to a lot of these other guys, and he's been racking up the points lately. So this could be a nice deeper league play, 11% owned there. My usual go-to would be Nick Schmaltz. I decided against picking him up on Monday when he had that 2-goal game. I regretted that for sure. 34% owned, dual eligible. He's got 4 goals, 3 of those on the power play in the last 6 games. Definitely a goal scorer with some shot volume, but he is relatively complete for fantasy purposes. Speaking of complete, Jason Zucker, 9% owned, left wing, 4 points in his last 3 games, 4 hits on top of that, 9 shots. Usually a goal scorer with some hitting, kind of like a Nino Niederreiter type, but a little bit more effective. He was injured to start the year. He took a little bit of time to get back up to speed, but now he is up to speed. 9% owned. You could get out in front of that. I assume he will probably start to continue to rise if he continues to put up points. So get out in front of it and pick him up if you're looking for some hits and goals. But speaking of goals, Michael Carcone, 3% owned, 13 goals in 25 games this year. That's a 42-goal pace. He is shooting out of his mind, I believe, at 30%, and he is number 1 in the league in goals above expected, meaning he's been shooting and scoring way more than his chances suggest that he should be. But he is scoring right now, and it's been longer than a week or two that this sample size has been going on, so you might as well ride it while it's still going on because he's only 3% owned. So if you have that waiver position and you want to get a guy in for the night or two, Michael Carcone is scoring goals despite his limited ice time. I think he's only averaging around 10 minutes a game, so for whatever reason, he's red hot right now scoring goals, and so is Lawson Crouse. Same goal pace, but you're getting a lot more peripherals out of Crouse. 2 goals, 2 assists, 4 points in his last 4 games, along with 7 hits and 10 shots. So you're getting a lot more shot volume and hitting out of Lawson Crouse, and you're getting some power play exposure. So he's going to be a little bit harder to own at 43%, but these are the guys that you could target. You could also go on D with Sean Durzi, who's getting some power play production going again. You also have J.J. Moser, who's been okay. You've got a couple of other guys, Matthias Michelli. You've got Lawson Crouse. There's a lot of guys that are going to potentially get you points. Logan Cooley has been a little bit cooler of late, pun intended, I guess, but that was really stupid. But nonetheless, he has been a little bit slower than he was earlier in the season. So this is one of those dips in the season that you might want to buy low on him, and you could get some power play production out of him. But there's a number of guys from Arizona. But that's going to do it for this look at Arizona. Let's take a look at some other guys that you could own this week. The Ottawa Senators play 4 times this week, so they will be heavily featured in this slide right here. You start off with Drake Batherson, 7 points in his last 6 games, assist heavy, but he's been very productive lately. He is getting 1.18 hits per game, so he's been relatively complete, a 77 on the completeness rating. Getting some power play production. Shot volume is a little bit low for him, but pretty good overall, 2.45 shots per game. And then 86th percentile in goal production as well. He's 67% owned, so he might not be available for you. So you may have to go with Vladimir Tarasenko, who I wouldn't necessarily view as like a longer term hold, but definitely short term. 6 points in his last 6 games, an even goal and assist split. He does hit a little bit, 1 hit per game, getting some power play production. Shot volume is a little bit low. Assists are really good. The goals should be a little bit higher given his skill set, but they have been coming lately, 3 goals in his last 6 games. So he is probably there for you in a 12-team league. But if you're in a 12-team league, one guy that I cannot recommend enough is Tom Wilson. It is a 3-game week, but he's got 2.87 hits per game, 99th percentile there. He's almost 3 shots per game, 88th percentile there. He's scoring goals, 85th percentile, 5 goals in his last 6 games, 2 power play points, 23 shots, 18 hits. So he's been doing everything, and he's probably their best player right now with Ovechkin not playing up to his usual form. Tom Wilson is a bangers must own. Even in a 3-game week like this, if you can go out there and pick him up in a shallow league, it's definitely worth it. He did have a hat trick in that sample size as well, but there's no signs that it's slowing down. He looked very good in the Rangers game Saturday night. And then another guy that I have him stashed on one of my teams. I'm looking at him in another league, is Josh Norris. The stats aren't necessarily there in terms of what he's done lately. A goal, an assist, 11 shots, and 5 hits in the last 3 games. So he is getting involved. Just under 3 shots per game, and he's getting some power play production. The hits are pretty good as well at 1.21. Usually a goal scorer. His goal pace is a little bit higher than this normally. He's a 75 completeness rating. He's top 6 in Ottawa. And as I said, they're going to play a ton of games from now on. So I would consider Josh Norris and Drake Batherson longer-term holds with Tarasenko as a shorter-term play in terms of Ottawa Senators. But I'm holding Norris in one of my leagues, 28% owned, single-position center, so it's not the best. But he is, in my mind, going to be one of the factors that you have to watch from mid-December onward for the Ottawa Senators. And then one of the hottest guys, I talked about him last week, and that is Mikael Granlund. 10 points in his last 6 games, 19 shots. The hit volume has kind of dropped off a little bit considering what I said about him last week where he was hitting a lot. But 10 points in 6 games is definitely something to take notice of, especially the assists. He is getting some power play production, but not a crazy amount, 3 power play points on the year. But the assists at 5-on-5, a little bit of hitting, some shot blocking, and then a little bit of shot volume as well, 19 shots in his last 6 games. So 29% owned, dual eligible. It is a 3-game week, and it is not the best team exposure, but San Jose is playing much better lately, so they are fantasy relevant, and we have to talk about them. Now, a guy who usually goes hot and cold, he was ice cold for a while until they got some reinforcements back in the lineup. Evan Rodriguez, 62% owned, 3-position eligible, which is one of the things that makes him more valuable in my mind. He does have a 3-game week this week, but 8 points in his last 6 games, 2 of those on the power play, 3 goals, 5 assists. He's 2.5 shots per game. He's 89th percentile in assists, getting some power play production, a little bit of hits, but if he's getting you any exposure to the top 6 in Florida, if he's getting any power play time with the 3-position eligibility and the pace that he's on right now, I would definitely ride this hot streak while you can, because he can, run this out for 2-3 weeks at a time before he goes cold again. So this is a guy that I would look at in some shallower leagues if you're looking for a spot start here or there. And then we also have Nazem Kadri. This is a guy who's been, somebody in the preseason I thought was going to be a little bit better than this, but he's hot and cold, and when he gets hot, he does produce something for you. 3 points in his last 3 games, 3-game point streak, 11 shots. The shot volume is good, just under 3 shots per game. Power play production's a little bit low. Huberdeau would be nice if they could get him going, because that would open up everything for everybody else. But with that said, 63, so not the most complete player, but this is a guy that I would have potentially looked at the beginning of the year. In a 4-game week, if you're looking for a streamer, he's probably the best you're going to get out of Calgary. But that brings us to some shallow league ads, and we'll start it off with Mason Marchment, and he's a guy we talked about a couple weeks ago. Used to be a big hitter in Florida, comes over to Dallas, has a different role, same type of line assignment where he's third line, but this third line is a scoring third line. 84th percentile in goals, 8 points in his last 7 games, 20 shots, 5 goals in those 7 games. So they're starting to come for Mason Marchment. 23% owned. It is a 3-game week, but he has been one of the hottest Dallas Stars lately. Their big guys haven't necessarily gotten going. Robertson, Heiskanen, a little bit quiet to this point in the season, so it's been guys like Marchment, Sagan, Duchesne picking it up for the Dallas Stars. So this is a guy that you would potentially want exposure to as long as he's going. But if you want that line assignment, Anthony Cirelli playing with Kucherov a lot last night. The blocks are pretty nice for him, but you're looking at the production in the last couple games, 7 points in his last 8, 1 power play point, 22 shots. So he hasn't necessarily put together a nice file up to this point in the season, but he's playing in that top 6 and he's getting some exposure to some of their elite players. And now that they got Vasilevsky back, they're playing a little bit better, won 3 of their last 4. So Cirelli is benefiting from all of those players, especially Kucherov, who is red hot right now. Had the best week of anybody in fantasy last week. So you might want to get some exposure to somebody in that top 6. And Cirelli is 3% owned, so he's going to be available for you in every league size. Now, another guy I wanted to talk about is Robbie Fabry. We talked about him a little bit in the past. His goal production is insane, 97th percentile, and he's done this for many years. It's just, you'd never know if he's going to stay in the lineup. When he does, he's very productive. 11 points in his last 9 games, 3 power play points. He's been getting some power play time. He's been getting top line minutes. And now Dylan Larkin might be out. And with Robbie Fabry playing in the top 6 already, I assume he might get that line assignment with DeBrincat and Kane. Who knows? But either way, he's been very productive. 6% owned is way too low for Robbie Fabry. As long as he stays healthy, he's a very productive player with the power play points, the goals. So that's what you're going to get out of him, just under a point per game as well. So this is a guy I'm definitely looking at to pick up in a 4-game week for Detroit. If for whatever reason he's not available, you also have Michael Rasmussen, 3 goals, 2 assists, 5 points in his last 4 games, 2% owned. He's dual position eligible, which might be a little bit better for you. His file isn't necessarily as good. You're looking at a 55 on the completeness rating, getting some blocks, a couple of hits here and there. The offensive production hasn't always been there, but he has some skill, and right now he's on a heater, 5 points in his last 4, so that would be the reason to pick him up. One guy I did mention in the preseason who's finally started to put it together is Tyson Forster, 5% owned, dual position center right wing. It is a 3-game week for them, but 6 points in his last 6 games, 2 power play points. He's gotten, I think he had a shootout winner in that span as well. He's been, one of the hardest shooting wrist shot guys in the league for a little bit now, and he's starting to capitalize on those 3 goals in his last 6 games. 2.12 shots per game is a little bit low for him, but it's been coming lately, and he's, again, getting top 6 minutes. He's been at times on the top line and the top power play for Philadelphia, and Philadelphia just beat Colorado. They've been playing really well all season long, and this is something that's been going on for a while now. It's not just a couple game sample size for the Philadelphia Flyers. You're looking at Tippett, Konechny, Forster. All these guys are very valuable. Atkinson can be valuable here and there, but Forster, in a deep league, he's 5% owned, so he's probably there for you. Now, one guy, I didn't really mention a lot of D here, and that is because, this is not necessarily the best week to go grab them. There are some guys who are getting some power play time, but of the teams that are playing 4-game weeks, there's not a ton that you can grab. Bowen Byram is available in some leagues, but he's just not been getting it done lately. He had a 2-goal game, but other than that, it's been a little bit quiet. So Jake McCabe for some hits and blocks, 94th percentile in hits, 73rd in blocks. He's got a 4-game week this week, 3% owned, and the offense has started to come a little bit. 3 assists in his last 5 games, along with 21 hits and 11 blocks. 4.2 hits per game and 2.2 blocks per game. So well above his season-long average over the last 5 games. So I would look to scoop him up if you need some hits and blocks for this upcoming week. But that's going to do it for the forwards. Let's turn now to the goaltenders. For the goalie ads this week, I talked about him last week, and we're going to start off with Charlie Lindgren. He has been incredible over the last number of weeks. It's not been a small sample size at all. He's been getting it done lately. In his last 4 starts, he has slowed down a little bit, but he does have 2 wins, a .938, and a shutout in that span. The team defense has come down a bit, down to 41st percentile, but he is way above expected, 96th percentile there. .924 is what this says. In actuality, this is not factoring in last night's game, so he's up to a .932 save percentage, and that goals against would drop because of that shutout as well, and he now has 2 shutouts on the year. He's only 28% owned. I don't understand it. If he's available on your wire, go grab him. He and Connor Ingram are 2 of the waiver guys that have come and become starting goaltenders over the past month or so, and they are taking it and running with it. They've been 2 of the best goalies in fantasy. Now, Peter Mrazek is not necessarily that case. This is a case where if you're in a points league where you're getting point weighting for total shots against or saves volume, 84th percentile in terms of total saves, he is above expected. The team defense is terrible. I believe 4.2 goals against per game is what they are expected to give up. But in his last 2 starts, 2 wins, he's got a shutout in there, .987 save percentage, really nice numbers, and they kind of go back and forth between him and Soderblom, so either one of them might be available for a spot start. If you can find them in a good matchup, that is a nice place to look for 20% ownership in Peter Mrazek. One of the guys that I'm thinking about for a longer-term hold is Anton Forsberg, and I say that because obviously we've been talking about it all episode. The Ottawa Senators have a ton of games coming up, which means they're going to have to use both of their goalies. And right now, Forsberg is very ownable at 7%. Last 3 starts, 2 wins, .938 save percentage. The team defense has actually been surprisingly better lately, 2.8 expected goals against per game. He is a little bit below expected, but he's been starting to pick it up over the past 3 or so weeks. So the numbers look bad in terms of an 885 save percentage, but again, 938 in his last 3 starts. And he's been one of those guys in the past that I've turned to for long stretches as one of those 1B type of players in Ottawa that can get you not necessarily a ton of starts, but really good numbers when he's in. Now, a guy that I didn't necessarily advocate you pick up at the beginning of the year is Devin Levi, because there was so much hype around him. He was a rookie with less than 15 games of experience, and he did get sent back down to the AHL. But since he's been back, 2 starts, 1 win, a 952 save percentage, 1.44 goals against. Looked really good in the game last night, lost it in a shootout, but that's not necessarily his fault. He played incredible. I believe Cole Caulfield had 9 shots. He got robbed on one of them by Levi. So it looks like Levi's confidence is back, and he's only 42% owned. He might be able to take the net back in Buffalo, and they're going to need to start stringing some wins together. They've got a 4-game week this week as well. And then another longer-term trend that I kind of wanted to keep an eye on and monitor is the Devils net. And Akira Schmid has been playing a lot better, 32% owned. Last 4 starts, 918 save percentage, 3 wins, 2.65 goals against. The team defense has been pretty bad, which is crazy to think of. They are one of the worst in expected goals against per game, 3rd percentile, 4.3 expected goals against per game. So they have not been the same defensive team that they were last year, which is something to keep in the back of your mind, because they just haven't been, you think of them last year, you think of Toronto last year as really good defensive teams, and that's not the case this year with either of those guys. So those goaltenders are affected. But with that said, Schmid is playing a lot better lately, and Vanacek has been dropping the ball left and right. They need someone to step up so they can start making a push. They've been winning. I believe they have 6 wins in their last 7 games, so they are catching up in the Metro, but they are still not in a playoff spot, I believe, as of recording of this video. The Rangers are number 1. Then you've got the Flyers at number 2, the Islanders at number 3. I believe the Caps are in there as well, and the Devils are chasing. So they need somebody to step up. It could be Akira Schmid, because Vanacek has not taken the ball and run with it. And so this at 32% ownership, this was a guy I was looking at in the preseason. And if he's still there for you, this could be a longer-term 1A option for you from here on in. But that's going to do it for the goaltenders. That's going to do it for this video. If you got anything good out of this, let me know in the comments section below. Let me know how you're doing. I always like to see that you guys are using this advice and hopefully getting some good production out of it. I also get a lot of advice from a lot of you guys. If I mention a player and you happen to bring in a little bit more context in the comments section, that's always very helpful. But that's going to do it for this one. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one.